Welcome to the King's Podcast, the ultimate guide of film and television. Okay, this is my last episode. So that was not my last episode, but this is gonna be my last one. I'm disgusted with myself. Quote Terry from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Terry loves love. And just like Terry, William loves love. William is a humongous fan of love. And I haven't watched all the seasons of Love is Blind, but every single time I do watch a season, I become very emotionally invested, I would say. I got into the first season, and for me, before I start this, I just kind of want to have a little quick word with the casting directors and producers of Love is Blind. Come here. Come a little closer. Yeah, come more closer. No. No. Stop it. Stop it immediately. Nope. Stop. And I'm fully aware I kind of sound like Kevin Hart right now. I'm fully aware of that. That being said, season 6 of Love is Blind was the most chaotic season I have ever watched in my entire life of watching Love is Blind. This is just my third season I've watched. I've watched season 1, watched season 4, but it seemed less focused on the love aspect, showing us loving, healthy relationships and making us believe that we can fly. The love is possible. You know, the reason why the show was a success because people loved Lauren and Cameron. We wanted that. We wanted that lightning in a bottle kind of couple. And we kind of got that with Brett and Tiffany. Not kind of, we did. Brett and Tiffany were incredible. They're still like my couple that I post on a vision board. Like, I want that, Lord. I want that. Do I have to go to like Washington or Oregon to find myself a beautiful chocolate king who will treat me like the queen that I am? Maybe. Who knows? Remember, he's somewhere. If he's somewhere there, he can find me. I'm ready. That being said, that's kind of what we want. Or we want like a surprise couple, like Bliss and Zach. We want they kind of seem like on paper they shouldn't work. When they're together, they work and they're so cute and you love their love. Instead of giving us that, they gave us horse shit on top of dog shit, donkey shit, and wrapped it in a bowl and said it was an ice cream sundae. What was that? In all seriousness, what was that? I do apologize. I'm a little heated, so I'm gonna already write explicit warning because I feel I'm gonna cuss. All the Christ will leave my body as I talk about the new season of Love is Blind. Apologies, but I'm already gonna let you know there's gonna be some cursing because I have a lot to say. I have a lot of opinions and a lot of things to break down. But first, I just wanted to start with a complaint to the casting directors and the producers of Love is Blind because they don't listen to the fans. We first said we don't want these young kids anymore because people who are just not emotionally mature for marriage. And then they change the age up, they change the casting, they give us Brett and Tiffany. We're like, yes, this is what we watch. Yummy in my tummy. I loved it. And then they go and give us this hot mess. A hot mess of the season. I mean, what was that? But I will get into it. But I just had to get that off my chest. My disappointment in what they gave me and what they showed me and what they didn't show me. Giving my hopes up, thinking I was going to be like, yes, love. No, love wasn't blind. Love was on mute. They forgot to unmute themselves. That's what they did with The Love is Blind. It's like you were on a Zoom call and you forgot to unmute yourself. That's what Love is Blind was doing this season. Ridiculous. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina this season. And we get to meet the singles as they enter the pods. All of them looking for love. Or most of them are really looking for clout to become Instagram famous. That's what they're doing. And they're just wasting our time. Wasting our time. Guess I'm still on this whole spiel. Okay. So we get to meet them, the attractive singles and whatnot. We get to see Nick and Vanessa really barely be there as hosts. Like, why are they there? We need new hosts. They're really boring. Like, bring in Cameron and Lauren, or bring in Brett and Tiffany. You know, do that. Like, have past contestants come in and be the hosts. Talk to these contestants, see where their mind's at. Talk to them about the journey, even afterwards when they're like back home with Charlotte, check on them. But they're not really doing that at all. I don't really know when Nick and Vanessa are there, really. But at least Vanessa is happy now because she has going to be a possibility of 2 Love is Blind babies, because you have, I think, from season 3 and season 4. I don't remember the couple from season 3. I didn't even watch it, but they're having babies. And, of course, Bliss and Zach are going to have a baby girl soon. So I'm excited for that. But back to Charlotte. Charlotte, North Carolina. We get introduced to people. And in the pods, the first person who did catch my eye was AD. Like, immediately I was drawn to AD. I thought she was beautiful, so sweet, and so kind. And already I was like, okay, I feel like this girl is going to be my girl, like watching in the pods. Her first connection that she has in the pods, if I recall, is with Matthew. And we first get introduced to Matthew as he's talking to Jessica, and Jessica has become like a fan favorite. I'm not exactly too sure why. Like, I'm kind of, it's interesting that she's like the fan favorite from the show. I wasn't really like team Jessica. I thought she was a great personality for TV, but I wouldn't say she didn't really seem like someone who was well fitted for Love is Blind. Like, I feel like she'll be really great. Like, I feel like if this was like a Real Housewives of Charlotte, she'd be like fantastic. Definitely like a character that we were like just adore and stuff like that. But going on to AD, we meet Matthew, and Matthew is really tall. He's actually good looking, really good looking. He's buff, really socially awkward, and he's meeting all these women, and he's just like giving them like a whole list of questions to answer. And he doesn't seem like he's being very, not just like meticulous, but sort of like very like mathematical, just kind of like not really leading with emotion through it. But for my first thing, I was like, okay, he's socially awkward. And then you see him opening up to AD in the pods, right? And from their first interaction, I was like, this is so sweet. There was how she was so sensitive with him and engaging with him. And you kind of saw him kind of like removing his layers a little bit. And at first I was thinking, okay, Matthew is just someone who's a bit of an introvert. Sort of like myself, I'm a bit of an introvert, someone who it takes me a while to warm up to people, so I'm not going to be like best friends with someone from the first time you meet. It's going to take me to be like, okay, make sense of the situation and whatnot. And I just, from the interactions, I just found myself kind of falling for them, for the pairing of AD and Matthew, and thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be my next love story. And I was already kind of getting like emotional, like watching them talk, and I was like, oh my gosh, because I love love. So I was like thinking to myself, this is going to be sort of the this someone who's like more socially awkward, more reserved, kind of falling in love with someone who's more of like a social butterfly. And I was just thinking to myself, it's going to be like in the book tropes of I hate everybody but you. I felt like Matthew definitely fit into that. It's great for books, but not really great in reality. Because there was something about it. I was like, okay, they were kind of giving me like gosh, Dexter and is that Lauren and Dexter? Is it Julie? No, was it Julie? But like no, I think it's Julie and Dexter vibes from the TV show Dexter. That's what they were kind of giving me. That vibe. And they were kind of, I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, they're just like, they're going to be like Tiffany and Brett, my Cameron and Lauren. I was just like really feeling it. But Adie at this time was forming a connection with Clay. And Clay and her were very flirtatious. From everything it seems that Clay was more or less what she usually went for. And just based on appearances, I was like, Clay is a very good looking guy. He seems very smooth. They seem like a fun couple, but it seemed like when they were in the pod, it seemed like more like dating than like conversations leading to marriage, but that was just my observation. But then it kind of turns out that Matthew, who I kind of like already formed this like fantasy in my head of like Adie and Matthew being this like really cute couple. It turns out he was really like full of shit, at least according to the show. Because there was another girl in the pause called Amber, who she said Matthew and her were bonding, and basically the same conversation that Adie was having with Matthew seemed like it was a conversation that Matthew was also having with Amber. And so Adie felt played because here she was really forming this attachment to Matthew, and it seemed like he was connecting with her on such an emotional level and kind of giving her like words of affirmation that I feel Adie hadn't really experienced that before, saying all the right things. And some people would say that's a form of love bombing. And then when she confronted him, he didn't kind of handle it well at all. And he kept on saying, oh, well, what is America going to think, And then Amber, the other one in the situation, decides to leave the show, and Matthew seems hurt by the fact that he hurt her feelings. And then Adie is kind of like over it. And then Matthew decides to leave the show. Frankly, there was something that felt fishy to me, particularly with like Amber. It kind of felt like there's some speculation that she could have been like a plant to stir up situations. And I have that feeling now that we found out that Amber had a boyfriend. This whole time she was doing Love is Blind, she had a boyfriend back home. And she basically went home because her boyfriend was like, you can only go so far. So she went home. So the whole conversation to me was like, okay, she could have been a plant. I can totally see the producer saying, you should say X, Y, and Z. It's going to like stir up some drama. I have a feeling because Matthew's like been talking on social media that they edited him wrong. This was not how the situation went at all. So I'm kind of curious, like, what really happened, because they never really showed, they didn't cut it to show what Matthew was saying to Amber. So we don't necessarily know in actuality what really happened. I mean, it was strange and like fishy. Everything just didn't seem right to me. Also, another thing I hated was Amber, when she was like engaging with Adie, she always kind of used like AAV, which is like African American vernacular, and it was just making me feel so uncomfortable. I don't know if anyone else picked that up, but sometimes, people who have what people we joke melanin deficient people tend to do this thing where they change their voices when they're engaging with Black people, especially Black people. They start reading words, and it's really annoying. They basically do like the whole Justin Timberlake genuine vibe, and that's how I feel like Amber was doing when she was talking to Adie, and it rubbed me the wrong way. So I didn't like Amber. like maybe she's sweet, maybe that's not what was happening, but how it was editing it, it seemed like she was doing that shit that I hate. Huh. So Amber continued to pursue her relationship with Clay. Clay, oh Clay. Clay is a walking red flag. He screams cheater energy to me. He really does. And for the whole time when I've seen them together in the past, I was like, he's not ready for marriage at all. He's not ready to be married. And just how he kind of engaged to her when he found out that there was a possibility that someone else was also competing with AD. Like, I didn't like how he talked to her at all. But they got through that and they got engaged and he was also another thing who just kept on wanting to see what her body was, how she was like, I can't fall in love with you unless I know how you look like. And then of course, like when he saw her, it was nothing like, oh my God, you're so beautiful, you're so stunning. It was just all about like her body, like, oh my gosh, look at your body, your curves, your ass. And it was just like, not like, you're so beautiful, look at your beautiful eyes, your smile makes me happy. There was just something so like superficial about him. And I have to admit, out of all the guys, like the guys who went on to be coupled and paired, I found Clay to be like the most attractive, right? Like just like face wise, he's tall, dark, and handsome. But there's just something about him that did rub me the wrong way, and I feel like maybe he triggered me a little bit because he was fat phobic. It's sort of the things that he would say, and so that did trigger me a little bit. So I was not really entertained by Clay at all. I didn't like him at all. I know that he's a work in progress. And I feel like he needs a lot of healing. He does need to go through a lot of healing. Clay is someone who you can tell has been deeply hurt by his parents' divorce. And the fact that his father was a serial cheater. And that's something that I think Clay struggled with. And even him to bring up a sort of like the male representation he had, he's like, oh yeah, like I'm not too sure I can be in a committed relationship because of these. I didn't really have any examples to kind of go off on. But for me, like I can understand more or less where he's coming from, but I feel as if when you don't have those representation, I feel like you have to have that will to fight even harder to make sure that you're not following the cycle. And it feels in a way that Clay really idolizes his father. He likes the fact that his father is like a bit of a player. And I think because of that, he's still trying to, I think he's still trying to figure out sort of like what masculinity means for him. And I think that's what I gathered with Clay. Him trying to figure out what masculinity means to him. And I feel for him, masculinity is about you being like successful, but also being unfaithful. Like that example of that toxic masculinity is tied to having a lot of women on your roster, just always not really being like settled down. And I think he needs to kind of work on that a little bit and before he jumps into a serious relationship. And to kind of go back to 80, 80 is my girl. She is my girl. She's a girl's girl. You saw that in terms of her defending another castmate, Laura. Just in her, like all her relationships with all the rest of the girls, you can tell she's gorgeous inside and out. But the problem with 80 is she doesn't feel that she's worthy of love. And it stems from her past relationships and also the lack of relationship she had with her father. And to me, I just felt it was so unfortunate because she deserves the world. And I think because of the fact that she doesn't feel worthy is the reason she ignores the United Nations of red flags that is Clay. And throughout, like when they were like on the vacation in the DR, and even when they're back in Charlotte, Clay keeps on telling AD his fears, and his big fear is he's scared of letting her down, and he's also scared of being unfaithful to her. And like AD is hearing this, but I don't think she's really listening. She's not really listening to Clay because he's giving her all these signs, all these indication that he's not the one for her. And yet she's just kind of going, keep on saying, I will jump off a cliff for this man. And I'm like, well, where did this come from? Like, where does this idea come from? Because he has not given me any indication that he's a man worthy. Not worthy. He has not giving me any indication that he's a man that will catch you when you fall. Because he won't. He will jump off the cliff, but he will be there with a parachute. And then you would just go, whoo, splat on the rocks. Because he won't be there to catch you. He won't be the one. He'll be there floating in the air with his parachute. And then you will be just there. Because he's not ready to catch you. He has too many issues on hand. He hasn't resolved his issues that he has with his family. I don't know if he's necessarily working to get there. It didn't seem that way, more or less. But there was something that did happen. Like if you just look at Clay and AD, they were an attractive couple. I personally found them to be like the best looking couple out of the pair of them. One thing I kind of hated, and I noticed it a lot, and this is like a whole like different segue, but still about AD and Clay, is it seems as if she was objectified a lot on camera and by the other cast members. So it does, this happens a lot, particularly with darker-skinned Black women. They get either hypersexualized or sort of like defeminized in a way. They're never seen as being real or necessarily being desirable. They're seen as being like fuckable, but not being the one that you marry and you protect and you cherry. Like you can live out all your wild, crazy fantasies. That's how, that the stereotype, and you kind of see it in more or less the conversation that some of the other cast members like had. There was one, I haven't talked about Jimmy yet, but we get to Jimmy. But Jimmy, when he sees AD, immediately he tells his fiance, Chelsea, who has a PhD in securities, that AD is stacked. He doesn't say AD is, oh, she's so beautiful and she seems so kind. But he says she is stacked. And immediately Chelsea kind of like bends around, like basically started talking, called her a bookshelf. Like she's a bookshelf or the bookcase or something. And basically starts saying like, AD, how do you get your ass to look that way? Once again, like I can guarantee if this was like a white girl or something, Chelsea would not be like objectifying her that in the way that she was. But it's kind of like white people feel that they're entitled to look and gauge and touch Black people's bodies in all kinds of ways. And you saw that also with Laura and Jeremy, where Laura basically told her fiance, Jeremy, oh, just bean dip her, which is basically going up to AD is smacking her titty. Sorry. I shouldn't have said it breast. But just smacking it. That's sexual assault. I don't care. And then Laura like downplayed it. Like, oh no, like something, like it was just a joke. No, it wasn't a joke. You feel like you have the right to touch and tell your fiance he can touch a black woman's body and it'll be funny. Like, in what world is that okay? Like, in what world is that okay? I was just looking at these fools. Look at these fools. And you can see, like, AD kind of, like laugh it off. She's like, okay, like, I can either make this a bigger issue or make it the issue that it really is, or I can, like, swallow it just to get along, just be easy. Because once you start bringing that out, then comes the white tears. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm not a racist. I would never do anything. Whatever nonsense they decide to do. I got heated. But as they go back, and this is going back to like AD and Clay, and they're back home in Charlotte, you see that Clay a lot of times is not really making time for AD. He's not coming home to her at night, and yet she's still saying that he has everything she will want in a man, but yet he is not prioritizing her. And you meet her mom, Jacqueline, who was so lovely, but yet it still seems as if even the mom, I think, is like blinded by the idea of this being AD's chance. And she's like, I've never seen you talk about a man's being so in love before. That she's kind of not necessarily seeing the fact that Clay is not a good fit for her daughter. And the wedding day comes, and AD is elated. She's glowing. You can tell that she's been dreaming of this day like forever. And it's still solidified the fact that she's more in love with the fantasy of Clay than the actuality of Clay. If she was rooted in reality, she would see that Clay for the walking red flag that he is. I mean, he has more red flags than a Republican convention. You know, she should not pursue this relationship. And shockingly, they get to the altar. AD looks gorgeous, stunning. She brought back the fake eyelashes. I wish she would take them away because she looks so much better without them. But not as bad as like the ones she had in the pods, like look like caterpillars. But anyways, Clay says no. And I respect him for that. But what I found so disturbing was when he kind of went the confessionals with the cameras and him saying that he was not deeply in love with AD. And he feels like he should be deeply in love with the person he is married to, which I agree. But for me, it's like, why go all the way to the altar? You could have broken off with her days before. You could have like embarrassed the girl, get her hopes up to her thinking this is finally her chance. She's gonna get married, and then boom, is not. And then him mentioning like the finances aspects. I was like, what is that? I don't like that. It's like, why is trying to act like it's like is he trying to allude to the fact that AD is just with him for like cash or whatnot, or she's broke? Because I feel like AD is doing well for herself. Maybe not to the level that Clay is, because she's not like breaking her back every day to do this. But we do meet Clay's father, whose name is Trevor. I like the father. I can tell that he really loved his kids and he poured a lot into his kids. He seems like someone who accomplished a lot and he wanted for his kids to accomplish more than him. What was shocking to me was like, Trevor was like shorter than I expected him to be, because Clay is really tall. And so I'm like, where did he get his height from? Because he didn't get it from his mom, Margarita, or from his dad, Trevor. But you can tell that Trevor, the father, he still has a lot of unresolved issues that he had with his own father, who would be Clay's grandfather, who was absent. And I think he took those wounds and took it to his marriage. And that's the reason why I believe he cheated. Because he had a lot of unhealed wounds. And a lot of times when people are like unhealed, they're going to try to find gratification elsewhere. Any place they can't find it, they will find it. And if they're not finding all the gratification that they can from like a union, like their marriage, they're going to look elsewhere because they're like unhealed. And there was a really great scene between Margarita, or the Trevor calls her Rita, and Trevor, where they're having a conversation about Clay and them talking, and it was like after Clay had said no. And Rita basically gathering Trevor and being like, the reason why he has issues with commitment is because of you, due to your infidelity. And the fact that you used to take him around, like take him on trips, which I wasn't aware of, while you cheated on me. And you can tell there's a lot of hurts between them, but she's also done with his ass as well. And you can see that the father, the father is still, like, it is hurting from it. But still, like, he's not necessarily taking accountability for his action. His excuse is, well, I didn't really have any examples to go when my father was absent. I mean, that could be, as I said, like, sort of like that unhealed trauma. And it's just, you can't necessarily take that and put it onto your kids, because it's not fair. But at the same time, yes, it's kind of like Clay in some ways is kind of like being like his dad. Like, his excuse is like, oh, my dad cheated on my mama. And that would be his, like, excuse, like, throughout. And then his father would be like, well, my dad was absent. That's why I cheated on your mama. And it's like, for them, the circle has to stop. The cycle has to stop somewhere. Has to stop with someone being like, just because this happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to determine the future. And Clay seemed like he was still trying to have his cake and eat it too, even though he already had told us he's not deeply in love with AD. So that just kind of felt like a little play to me. Like he was playing her at that moment. But at the end, you can see, like, AD, I felt like she was kind of given, like, what I call the Rachel Lindsay Bachelor editing. Like, in the season of when Rachel Lindsay was on The Bachelor and Nick was The Bachelor, she was crying off in the limo. Like, AD was kind of giving me that vibe, her crying, like, when is going to be my turn? I was like, well, are they, like, setting AD up for, like, a Bachelorette type of reality show on Netflix? I'm like, I would be down, because she is a star. In my opinion, I loved her. I loved her interaction. One thing that there was in the final episode, there was a scene in the Bachelorette party with her and Amy are holding hands. Like, my heart burst so much. I was like so happy. They're so cute, because like Amy and AD like were my girls. They were like my unproblematic queens. So sweet. They were like the biggest sweethearts. Compared to other contestants we saw, like that we got to glance, Amy and AD were the sweetest ones. The sweetest ones. But honestly, I feel that if she was AD, she doesn't know her worth. And she can't be with all these broken men that need to be built up. She keeps on finding these, like, Pinocchios. She needs a man that is already ready. That is going to build her up, will pour into her, uplift her. She needs that. I'm excited for the reunion. It's going to be interesting to see her talk with Clay. I don't know where they are right now in terms of communication, how everything is. And also I'm curious, like, about her talking about Matthew as well. So I'm looking forward to the reunion. I hope that the Nick and Vanessa do something, because they're not the best of hosts, if I'm being honest. But they're there for whatever reason. They're there. Something kind of occurred to me when I was rewatching the wedding episode of Love is Blind. When Clay mentioned that about 80's finances, I'm kind of wondering if he was indirectly talking about class. The fact that maybe he didn't realize that class was important to him. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is, if you look at Clay's family, you look at his brothers, you look at his mom, you look at his dad, and you even look at Clay. Clay seems to be someone who grew up in a upper middle class or middle class Black family. He looked like he came from something. You know, he wasn't necessarily someone who had to build himself up or necessarily struggled. He seemed that his family was able to provide for him. And that's something he also wants to continue, like the legacy of self, like making himself be sort of like his own, like a millionaire, and establishing himself. And I feel as if 80 family weren't the same level as Clay's family. And I wonder if that could have been the reason. Where 80 is doing well for herself. And you can tell, you know, she was a cheerleader for the Patriots. You know, now she's doing her own thing. And she's in real estate, and she's like working as a manager in a nightclub. She's doing well for herself. And I think maybe Clay is thinking maybe he wanted someone who's doing better than that. So I'm kind of wonder, I feel as if maybe he was indirectly talking about class. And I think that could have been an issue he never considered before. Not to say he's a classist, but maybe he has some issues with class that he never realized before. The thing about AD and Clay is, I don't think they are well suited for each other, and I'm not too sure if the wedding was a period in their relationship. I hope it was. I really do, because Clay is not ready, and Clay is not 80's guy. 80 needs to be with someone who's already there. She can't just live in this pattern of being a fix-a-hoe. And she hasn't changed her ways of being a fix-a-hoe. She's just too much in that mentality. But we'll see. The reunion is coming soon. And we'll see where the status of their relationship is. I hope it's a period. I hope it's not like a comma, question mark. I hope that was the period in the relationship. No more Clay and AD, because they are not it. They're not at all. Yeah. We'll see what the future really holds. I really pray for her sake and even his sake. Yeah. But I'm really, like, side note, Clay has some really good looking friends. Like, I wonder if they're single. They seem like they're very, like, more settled than he is. So, yeah, I wonder if they're single. In the pods, one of the first couples to get engaged, or at least that we saw their engagement, was Brittany and Kenneth. They weren't really the main focal couples in the pods, because I think the producers were more concerned about the couples that are involved with the love triangles. So the ones who kind of like were only dating exclusively weren't really paid that much attention. There wasn't much screen time. And so just in passing, we kind of got Kenneth and Brittany and seeing them, and they seemed very solid. Both of them were educators. Kenneth was a middle school principal. Brittany was a teacher. They were both really young. I believe they were like 25, 26, like babies, both really young, and both of them were religious. You know, they bonded over their love of Jesus. And I know that's like, I think, because I do kind of like watch people's not interactions, but people's commentary about Love Is Blind, and a lot of times they refer to them as being the Jesus couple, uh, which I found to be like an interesting conversation. That's a one for another thing. But anyways, Kenneth and Brittany are an interracial couple. Kenneth is a black man and Brittany is a white woman. And when they were in their pods, they looked like they were short things. Like, I thought that they would be the ones that were going to make it to the altar. They just seemed as if they were like aligned on the same page. They seem to like really connected like emotionally, and when you first see them, you're like, okay, you wouldn't imagine that they will like fit well. Like, they didn't really seem like a couple that, like, just on like paper, just seeing them, you're like, oh, you wouldn't necessarily think they were a couple, but when they got together, I was like, okay, I can see that how they would be, and they seem to be very affectionate. And like, Kenneth was so happy when he saw her. He was like, thank you, God. God is good. And they're like, all the time, all the time, God is good. And so it's like, won't he do it? Kind of vibes. But when they got to the DR, is like, things just shifted. Because Kenneth seemed to be already kind of like mentally checking out from the relationship, and that started in the DR. But even like first, he was very present with her, checking to see if she had a chair. And then there was also something like immediately, like, I think when she met up with the rest of the girls, Chelsea kind of asks like Brittany, oh, do you feel safe with him? And that kind of like, made me kind of like turn my head, like, wait, does she feel safe with him because he's a big black man? Like, what the hell? Then I think Chelsea had to clarify something. She caught herself and realized, oh, that kind of sounded a little racist. But just like, do you mean like to make you feel safe? And she's like, yeah, he makes me feel so safe and feel so good. Like, I feel like, my heart could be with him. And then, when they're all interacting and all the guys are losing their shit over AD, Kenneth starts talking to AD, and AD kind of mentions this is a conversation that a lot of black folks do have. And kind of watching sort of like the noise kind of around, a lot of people were like mad at AD for asking this question. But I was like, no, this is a question. This is what we always ask each other. Basically just asking, is Brittany going to be okay raising black kids? That's a fair question. And Kenneth's like, yeah, like, I really do think we will be. And they even like had Brittany and him had this conversation, which is so interesting because I feel like this should have been a conversation they had in the pods. We are an interracial couple in the year of the Lord 2024, whether it was 2023, but yes, the year of the Lord 2024. You have to, like, kids do become a factor because you have to just make sure that I'm going to try to see if I can like go through this delicately and kind of be like sort of like, so I'm going to go through this delicately as best as I can. We are living in some really messed up times. And honestly, love sometimes is not enough, right? You can't just love someone. Someone, if has to love you and love all that you encompass. And if you're coming in an interracial relationship and they're just not also understanding the history that comes with sort of like your skin or your ethnicity, and sort of like the trauma that comes through it, then they're not really seeing you. You know what I mean? And so when you decide to raise kids and your kids come through and they may have issues regarding racism, will you be able to really stand 6 feet deep in the water, be able to navigate those conversations? You may not fully be able to understand, but will you be empathetic to what they're experiencing and feeling and really try to make things easy for your kids? Or will you be like, oh, no, things, just ignore them, or, give them that kind of advice? You have to be kind of very delicate. And these are like real questions that you should be asking and should be ready for. And so a lot of people were getting like mad at AD, and I was like, no, don't even come there. Don't even come there. Take your little I was about to say something a little. Well, I was like, please take your like Karen-esque ways away from this conversation and stop ignoring me. oh Lord, I'm just done with people. Fairly, but let's just go back to Kenneth, and it just that the way how it was edited, that I'm saying the producers were making it seem like that's where the problem stemmed from, like Kenneth, but Kenneth seemed like he was fine afterwards. Because it seemed afterwards that Kenneth seemed to be mentally checked out. He wasn't engaging with Brittany. It became very awkward. And a lot of people say like, oh, he could just be an introvert. But I'm an introvert. I need my quiet time. But when I'm with my people, I talk a lot. I'm really touchy-feely, but he was not giving like an introvert with their people vibe. He was giving an introvert behavior, being around people who are not comfortable with. That's how he was acting with Brittany. Brittany was getting like an introvert. Like I have been in situations where I don't really care to have conversations with people. I'm like, I'm just going to sit and enjoy my quiet, enjoy my solitude, and just think about all the things that are on my mind. I don't necessarily feel like I need to engage with you right now. But this is a time where you should be like really, because it wasn't a comfortable silence, Because I love comfortable silences, when you're with your people and you get to just chilling in silence. This was an awkward silence, like unbearable. And he was so unaffectionate with her. He was just so withdrawn from her. And you can almost see as if like the attraction for her was like dwindling down. And it got worse when they got to Charlotte. He got his phone back, and it seemed as if that's all he was focused on, his phone. He cared more about his phone than being with her. And once again, for me being an introvert, sometimes I use the phone as a shield so I don't have to deal with people. I was like, I'm just going to be on my phone so I don't have to be in awkward situations. But a lot of times, like, especially if I'm around someone like I love, I get really excited to kind of understand them, to understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Just kind of want to know what they think a little bit. And sometimes you just kind of want to be with someone who kind of quiets all that noise in your head. And just honestly did not seem that was working for Kenneth and Brittany. And it feels as if they connected on such an emotional, spiritual level, and that can turn, when you're connected that way, you can turn to like physical attraction. But now he had closed off both that emotional connection for her, so that, of course, the rest of the attraction is going to dwindle down. And there was absolutely no spark between them, no chemistry. It was a serious roommate situation. But honestly, I feel as if they both were not attracted to one another physically. But I feel for Brittany, it's something that could happen, if he was emotionally available to her, and he was not. And she was mentioning, sort of like their final like conversation, she's like, I want to crave, my future husband, and that craving is missing. And they were a couple who decided to like wait until marriage. And she's like, she's like, now I'm not even feeling like there's no craving. I have there's like no temptation. It's not like I just want to jump your bones, And then when she addresses this with him, he kind of flips the problem and make it seem like she's the one that has an issue. And it's like, yeah, maybe we should break up. And it honestly felt like he was gaslighting her. I don't know if it could be the editing, but in their breakup, he was just so cold. She was crying her heart out, and he didn't comfort her. There was one time he like smirked, and he was just on his phone. Oh, so there are the first breakup we have out of the five couples that emerged out of the pods. They were the first breakup, and honestly, I thought like I didn't really get to know Brittany too much. Like I said, she wasn't too highlighted in the pods. I didn't get to see her, but from like seeing her like out in when they're in the DR and seeing them in Charlotte and just her conversation, especially her conversation when they were talking about how raising kids, I was like, I like her. I like her a lot. I think she's the sweetest. And she's someone who deserves great love. And I pray she finds that perfect man for her. Kenneth was not it at all. I don't know how they're going to navigate their conversation. I hope they do talk about it when we go to the reunion, because he was really unfair to her. Like, I would have never guessed, coming from like the pause and how he was in the beginning of the, I would never have guessed he would have been like switched so cold on her. He seemed to be more invested with AD and Clay as a couple than he seemed to be with his own relationship and dolphins. He was really into dolphins. I love dolphins too. Yeah, I do love dolphins. Even though they're like, dolphins are like more what we think sharks are. Like beluga whales are what we think dolphins are. Like, we should really be more hyped about beluga whales than we are dolphins. Dolphins are menaces to society, but they're so sweet to humans, but they really are menaces to society. At least in the ocean they are. Beluga whales are where it's at. Oh God. But there was some rumors that did kind of spread about Kenneth. I'm not going to address it, but if you heard about it, it did kind of come out by one of his family members, and it just kind of makes sense about everything. It kind of explains, I guess, his lack of attraction or feeling to Brittany, and probably explains why he even got into the whole experience in the first place. I'm not too sure. They're going to bring up in the reunion. Really, frankly, it's probably none of our business, but that was Brittany and Kenneth's story. So we are going to be getting to the dumpster fires of couples. This one is not as bad as the other, but it's a huge burning dumpster fire. So this is one of the love triangles that starts off in the pods, and it's between Jeremy, Sarah Ann, and Laura. Interesting enough, Laura was my girl in the pods. I liked her. She was really upfront. I thought she was beautiful with a great body. She was really close to Jessica. And she seemed to be like really watching out for Jessica's heart, and I really appreciated it. And that's why I kind of like warmed up more to Laura. But Jeremy, it was interesting because Jeremy seemed to get on like well with Sarah Ann. He was telling Sarah Ann about his father who's passed, and this is not something he didn't really share with Laura, that about visiting his father's gravestone, but he mentioned this with Sarah Ann. What is interesting about Sarah Ann is like, I think she was like, one of the things she mentioned right away was like the fact that she's done plastic surgery, and I was like, wait, but she's so young. Why are you doing Botox? You're not even like 28. But she's like so young when she was doing Botox. She was doing like lip implants. I think she did something with like, I don't know, she did like a eye lift or something. She did something like, it's maybe like she did some like more like plastic surgery. She touched her face a lot, which is really sad because she's like so young. So and then she had like also mentioned the fact that she was a conservative patriot, and for some reason I get this image of like her in a all American flag bikini with like guns blazing and eagles flying behind her. That was kind of like my image of her being like she's like a conservative patron. I think I have a feeling she probably has that picture of herself like that in her house somewhere. Anyways, Jeremy chooses to go with Laura. And they see each other, and I thought they were really cute. They seemed like a really good looking couple. And I was like really shocked at how like affectionate they were. When they went to their honeymoon phase in DR, they were so cute. They were kissing and feeling up on each other. And I was like, hey, they seem like a different pair. She seems to be more grounded. He seems to be more of a goofball, was having like a good time. And she's always like, oh, you're so silly, all this stuff like kind of like I guess like putting him down a little bit. But they kind of had a big blowout when, and I think I had mentioned this about the bean dip situation, and where she jokingly quote told her fiance to go and bean dip AD. And this is when like my feelings for Laura kind of changed. Like she was like my girl in the pod. When that happened, like I got a complete sour taste in my mouth. She didn't take any accountability for the joke she did and the fact that she offended AD. She was not just basically objectifying AD, and I didn't like that at all. But she kind of like flipped it around to make it seem as if Jeremy embarrassed her by telling the joke. Well, she shouldn't have made the joke in the first place. And but his like reaction to their fight is like he came off being kind of like an immature brat. I feel as if like I always say like how you can tell about someone is how they are engaged in the fight. Are they someone who do they hit below the belt or do like roll over and show off their belly? Like how are they like in a fight? And Jeremy doesn't fight well. He comes off a little bit like a 7-year-old boy when he's in a fight. It's not attractive. And Laura, honestly, she needs a man, not a little boy. And Jeremy definitely had some little boy tendencies. But interesting about Jeremy, like there's some tea that come out prior to going on the show. Like I think weeks before he went to the show, he was engaged and living with his fiance and his would-be stepson. They broke up so he can be on the show. So already it's like why is he even there? Because he just was engaged before. I doubt he's ready to get engaged again. He doesn't come across like a serial monogamist like Nick Lachey. He just went from one engagement to the next. Just could never like date and just be by himself. That doesn't seem like it. It seems as if he's someone who's kind of smooth, kind of gets girls, whatever. But he seems to have not cut ties with his other option, Sarah Ann. And Sarah Ann decides to DM Jeremy when they come back from the DR, basically saying like, hey, like if things change, I'm here, like hit me up, which is just downright disrespectful. Absolutely disrespectful. But she's not a girl's girl. I was not a fan of Sarah Ann at all. Not at all. But more drama comes when Sarah and Jeremy do actually meet up. They link up at a club. I remember. She said Lost and Found. That's the name of the club. They go meet up at a club called Lost and Found in Charlotte. And they're out until 5 o'clock in the morning. And Laura was basically like, where were you? And he was like, he's like, did he want to have a conversation with her? And he was basically lied, like, yeah, like me and like Sarah Ann, we just stayed up until 5 o'clock in the morning talking. And she was like, she caught his ass cheating. She was like, no, you weren't. You were there at her apartment because I know she lives XYZ. I was like, oh, she got your ass. Got your ass. And so that's basically how their relationship ended. Because Jeremy just turned out to be a liar and a cheater. Um, Basically, and they come out to the cookout, and Jeremy is wearing his Hawaiian shirts that he knows Laura loves so much, because Laura basically hated the Hawaiian shirts, and she's like drag him all the time, especially like even her family members were like, "What's up with that? Like, do you love this man, or are you just mean to him?" But I think what I gathered, particularly with how hurt she was about the whole Sarah Ann situation, I feel as if she puts on like a really strong front, but she was really hurt by Jeremy's actions. And that, it did suck to see. It did suck to see. I also think she's another one I feel has a great personality for TV. I'm not saying the great personality in like in real life, because there was stuff about her that did irk me. So I wasn't saying like that, but I think like her and like Jess should do a show together. Like maybe they're dating exploits and Charlotte and whatnot. I think they really seem to be great for TV. But I have mentioned, like, she was friends with Jess, and just in another situation that I'm going to hop onto later. But it seemed as if she was kind of pushing her friend to kind of see Jimmy, who was another love triangle person, which I'm going to get to. But it was kind of interesting that that's what she was kind of doing, but at the same time, she was also in this, like, a pickle of a situation where there was another woman, and she was being the other woman Sarah Ann being disrespectful to her and her engagement by basically pursuing Jeremy. I'm interested to see the reunion, because I hope Laura lights Jeremy's ass up, like cusses him out from head to toe. I'll be there drinking wine and eating popcorn and enjoying it. And I hope she cusses out Sarah Ann as well. So that's another thing that I want to talk about. I want to talk about AD collecting Sarah Ann's ass when they got to the cookout. Oh my gosh. Oh, AD read her for filth. And then being the little, I must say something else. She basically was like, oh my god, everyone's making it seem like I'm a bad person. Well, you are, boo. You are. I was about to call her something else. I said boo instead. Oh my gosh. Oh, but honestly, that was my favorite thing. Like AD, like basically collecting her ass with a smile. I was like, that's my girl. And even with like Laura just not necessarily respecting AD's, like, I guess, boundaries, she still had Laura's back, and that is why AD is my girl. She's a girl's girl. Her and Amy are definitely girls, and I love that about them. So that is the little situation between, I'm not going to get into too much details, Jeremy, Laura, and Sarah Ann. Apparently, I don't know if it's true or not, but Jeremy and Sarah Ann, I think, are still dating to this day. I mean, they were off there, like, living their best lives on jet skis, where Laura was there crying her heart out. It was just, like, the ridiculousness of it. They're living their best lives, and there's Laura crying. I tell you, I think they really do deserve one another, because they're both despicable human beings. Despicable. Like, honestly. I think he just thought to himself, he's like, man, I didn't get to taste some of that conservative coochie. I should have some conservative coochie. Oh. I mean, I haven't had it before, so maybe it's good. I don't know. I was contemplating whether or not to leave them for the last, but I decided to just have them, to talk about them now. And that's Amy and Johnny. Amy and Johnny were the first couple who got engaged in the pods. And my first impressions is they seem really, really, really sweet. Amy was I believe she's Puerto Rican, but I believe I think on her mom's side, her mom is, or I think before she moved, I think her mom's family, I think originated from Spain, particularly Catalan. Catalan, I hope I'm pronouncing it well. But if you don't know anything about the history, there are a specific region of Spain that's been trying to get their independence for a while. I hope they do. I think it'll be a beautiful thing if they are able to gain their independence. Not to start anything political. I guess I'm doing that. But first impressions, Amy is a sweetheart. So sweet and so kind and irradiates off the screen. She reminds me of a love child of Catherine McPhee and Rosalind Sanchez. They are like the least problematic pair. That's even like, that's a stretch. They're like, they're like, I think problems really weren't facing, but whatever they were, they faced it together. They are really what the premise of the show is all about. I'm really curious to know what Amy's type was prior to getting engaged to Johnny, because she did mention that Johnny is not something that she usually go for. And Johnny was like, you are so out of my league. You know, I would have never even approached you if we were in like a club together. I mean, Amy is gorgeous. She's beautiful. And Johnny, you can see Johnny has like, he's kindness wrapped in a human bubble. He has really beautiful eyes, and that's something that as soon as you see them, they're extremely affectionate. And out of all of them, they're the only couple that's not having sex, which is interesting because they're probably the most intimate and more affectionate couple. You can just see love radiating off of each other. And it is so beautiful to see. Because I remember she was thinking, like, you know, I was like so worried that we wouldn't have like chemistry, because sometimes you can like everyone, when you can have great conversation with someone and then you meet them and it's like, oh, we lack any chemistry. It could have been like a Kenneth and Brittany situation where they had no chemistry, but they had amazing chemistry right from the jump. And I really feel as if the producers did such a disservice to Amy and Johnny because we didn't get to see more of their love story. We saw them, they were so cute. The big issue was about family planning. Johnny was not ready to be a dad first, and Amy wasn't on birth control. And he was kind of worried because he was like, I'm not too sure a condom is like bulletproof, or you know, something. Who like worried about getting pregnant. I feel like that's something they definitely can work through, and that was just always a concern. Because he wanted to get retired really early. And we meet their families, and their families are adorable. I love Amy's father. His name escaped me right now, but Amy's father was so sweet. He was such a handsome gentleman, and you can just see how much love he poured into Amy. And also, the mother as well was so adorable. And what I did love was when we got to see, it seemed like that their families actually blended well together. And I can't recall too many other families that had blended like so well as Amy and Johnny, where like Johnny's sisters were bridesmaids. They were referring to each other as being like, oh, like welcome to the family. You can see like so I wish we had seen more of that, of like the families interacting, like when they got together, like how they all interacted. It seemed like it wasn't the first time they were meeting up at the wedding. And so Amy and Johnny get married. And I would tell you, I think by the time it came to Amy and Johnny's like story when they're at the wedding, I really needed to see it. I was craving to see that because there was just too much mess that Love is Blind has given me. Seeing her father see her for the first time in the dress, I was crying, and him talking, and then also her talking with her brother, and they were like walking down the aisle together, the father and the brother and Amy. Amy looked so beautiful. She looked like a princess. And when they said I do, they were like, I think it's like their name is, I think, McIntyre Cortez Or is it Cortez McIntyre? Because I think Amy's last name is Cortez, and Johnny's last name is McIntyre. Sort of like the New Kids on the Block, Joey McIntyre, and so they're gonna take both of their names together and be Cortez McIntyre, and it was so beautiful to see. That was kind of what we as viewers want. We love a love story. We don't want chaos. And it honestly feels as if they completely lost their plot this season of what we wanted, and they weren't servicing us. They gave us nothing but disaster. It's going to be really an interesting reunion. And I really feel as if they should have focused on Amy and Johnny, because Amy and Johnny were the premise of the show, that Love is Blind, because they wouldn't have met in any other circumstances without Love is Blind, because Johnny would have been too shy to meet her, and she would have been like, oh, like, he's not necessarily what I go for. I have a feeling she likes tall, dark, and handsome, too. But they were so beautiful when we saw them together. I was like, this is such a beautiful, loving couple, and they were the strongest couple there. They had so much love for one another, and I'm really sad that we didn't get to see more of Amy and Johnny. We go from the sweetness of Amy and Johnny to the dumpster fire on a crashing train off a cliff into icy sea that is Jimmy and Chelsea. Jimmy, we first meet Jimmy kind of is interested in Jess, who is, as I mentioned, is the fan favorite Jess, the single mom Jess. And Jimmy bonds with Jess and Chelsea. And it seems as if he has an issue. Like, it's a lot from her taking, because I think when he was thinking of getting married, he wasn't thinking of becoming a stepfather. And so he had a lot to process. And Chelsea had been married before, and Jimmy was kind of processing that as well. But in terms of everything he heard, that wasn't like the most jarring thing that he dealt with. And Chelsea also had another guy she was interested, Trevor. And when we introduced to Trevor is like, sort of like, he calls himself like, I'm not just a meathead. He's a big, buffy gym guy. It's quite interesting because I feel like initially, like, it seemed like Jess and Trevor seemed to be like the fan favorites, like people were loving them, and it was kind of interesting because I was like, I don't think I really cared so much about either one of them, particularly like for like the Trevor. I was like, why are they obsessed with this guy? I mean, it just seemed like his head seemed too big for his body. Like, it definitely films itself. You know, when you can tell someone their body shape is not natural to what they're supposed to. Like, I can tell that he made his body that way. It wasn't like a natural thing for his body to be that big. And he had like a army of red ants on his forehead. I wasn't too sure where it was. First, I was thinking maybe he had like hair implants. So I was thinking that's what it could be. Like, he just had recent hair implants. Kind of now seeing the promos where he's out and about, I feel like he could have had that. Kind of looked like he did hair implants, and maybe that was like his reaction. But then online, people were saying it's like most likely due to steroids, which would explain why his head looked too big for his body. But basically, Trevor came across as being the really sweet guy. He said that he loved The Notebook. I mean, if any guy said that was his favorite movie, I would like have a raised eyebrow, because The Notebook was a very toxic love story. That people pass as being the greatest love story. Like, that was very toxic. I mean, if a guy said I liked a Walk to Remember, I was like, he's a green flag for me. I was like, I love A Walk to Remember. No, Notebook, not so much. It's just so cliche. And then he was like, oh yeah, I want to do like Volunteer the Soup Kitchen. It honestly seemed like he was lying. I wasn't buying anything Trevor was selling at all. Nothing he was selling was making sense to me. I mean, he seemed very sweet, and it seemed him and Chelsea were bonding, and I really felt that Chelsea was gonna go with Trevor, because Trevor was really open with her. He's like, I love you. I want to be with you when I get married. So I was thinking, okay, that's it. But new word on the street is Trevor had a girlfriend back home while he was doing Love is Blind. And she exposed his ass. And basically, I heard that he wasn't happy that she exposed his ass, and so she kind of threatened her, and she, like, basically posted all the threats. So basically, this whole, like, nice guy routine is an act. That's why I don't like nice guys. I like kind guys, because nice people can be evil. Okay? Nice guys can stab you 8 times and put you in a freezer. Kind guys know so much. They'll break up with you because they know that it's the right thing to do. Trevor was a mess. Is a mess. Still is a mess. I don't know if they're going to call him out on the... I think they should, because he's full of it. He's full of donkey shit. Anyways, but... So, Chelsea and Jimmy, they form a connection. And I feel both of them were really loving the fact that they were kind of in this love square. Oh, actually more. So it was like, it was more than, I guess it was more than squares, but like more love star. They liked the fact that they were, oh yeah, it was like more of a square, because yeah, it was like a love square. It was more like a love square. They liked the fact that they were in this love square, or as Trevor called it, the love star. They enjoyed the fact that people were vying for other people. Like, I think Jimmy found Chelsea to be more attractive because Trevor was into her, and Chelsea thought Jimmy was more attractive because Jess was into him, and eventually, Jimmy said, I loved you to Chelsea, and asked her to marry him, and this is like a whole thing because she basically said in the pause, people say I look like Megan Fox, but I don't see it. And the internet has been roasting her for saying that commentary. I think some people said she looks more like The Mask than Megan Fox. I found that to be mean. I just feel, other people said she looks like Adele. I don't see the Adele comparison. I can see what she's talking about Megan Fox. It's in the eyes. And, like, the dark hair. Like, and, like, if she, like, her profile sometimes does look like Megan Fox. Adele, I don't see Adele at all in her face. Nor did I see Carrie Underwood. She said that some people told her she looked Carrie Underwood. I don't see it at all. I don't see Carrie Underwood in her at all. But I can see, like, the Megan Fox resemblance of it. People have been roasting her so much, for saying that, auntie, but she didn't say she looks like her. She said people have told her that she looks like Megan Fox. In her defense, so Jimmy and Chelsea get engaged, and then when they open the doors to reveal, Jimmy's is a bit in a shock because I think in his head he was imagining like her to look completely like Megan Fox, and she didn't. She also kind of, like, ran to him kind of weird. Like, she said, like, in a T-Rex kind of way. Like, I felt like her, like, I don't know what dress they put her in. I feel it was, like, it just wasn't stretchable. So it was, like, a little too tight. And so, like, when she was running to him, it looked weird. Like, she was about, like, to trip off or whatnot. And he just seemed to kind of be, like, in shock. And, I don't think he was too happy necessarily. Like, I think he had to get to his like brain had to like rectify with that. Oh, she's not really like Megan Fox. They had to do that, and I don't think he was being like. At first, I kind of wanted to throw hands because like, oh, because when he was like, oh, she lied to me. Because as I said, Chelsea kind of was my girl in the pods. She was my girl in the pods, and those feelings kind of. They really dwindled down. She really stopped being my girl really fast. I feel like DR just ended a lot of that for me, for most people. But yeah, once they got to the DR, Jimmy and Chelsea, I feel as if Chelsea could sense that Jimmy wasn't 100% into her, that he wasn't 100% attracted to her. And I believe that's where her insecurities started to build. Because immediately she was enamored with Jimmy. She was like, "You were so handsome. You're so gorgeous. You're the best looking guy." And the way she was talking, you would think that, Jimmy was Bradley Cooper or Teal James or Henry Cavill. Just the ridiculous amount, really a good, like jarringly handsome man, or Jude Law in The Talented Mr. Ripley. Like, the way she was, like, talking about Jimmy, I was like, you would think she was talking about Jude Law in The Talented Mr. Ripley. Which I would say, no man has looked better than Jude Law in The Talented Mr. Ripley. I haven't seen anyone look more pretty than that. So that's in my head, the way she was talking. She was, like, almost talking as if it was, like, that. I was like, Jimmy has pretty eyes. But I wouldn't say he's, like, out of your league, Chelsea, but I feel she kept on thinking he was out of her league. And I think they were in bed together, and she kind of asked him, "What do you notice?" And he's like, "The first thing I noticed is that you had big teeth." And so that was not the nicest thing to say. And I think, a lot of insecurities started building in Chelsea. And back in the pods, Chelsea was mentioning how she's so used to men treating her like shit. She's not used to men being so upfront about their feelings for her. And here she had these two great guys, who were kind of opening their hearts to her, and they loved her, without seeing her. And I don't think she was prepared for that, mainly because Chelsea needs to do a lot of healing. She's someone whose trust has been abused multiple times because she's been cheated on. And I think that she's bringing a lot of those insecurities into all of her romantic partnerships. And so that's kind of how it goes. And when they go to the cookout and they're all excited to see their friends and everything, Jimmy mentions to her that AD is stacked and his eyes are lit up. And Chelsea's like, thinking to herself, he's never acted like this to me. So maybe he's not attracted to me at all. And, she kind of tries to embarrass him by calling AD out and saying, "AD, how do you get the ass to look that way?" And AD, being her gracious self, goes, "Squats and Jesus." And so then Jimmy is there talking to AD, and from, like, our glances, it seems like he's really enamored with her, and Chelsea just seems to be shrinking, because she's thinking to myself, here's my fiance, and he's completely enamored with a woman who I look nothing alike. I'm never going to be as gorgeous as her. Like, I'm just trying to, imagine putting myself in her headspace. And they go back to the hotel room, and Chelsea has, a complete, meltdown. She's just bringing up to him that, he made her feel, "You made me feel uncomfy." That was, the start of it all. And I'm happy that she kind of brought that up to him, and he seemed like he was really listening to her. But there was just, a moment while I was watching that fight, that they happened, that it just seemed kind of a bit concerning for me. There was something about how she would be kind of yelling at him, and then next thing you know, she'll be grabbing his hand and holding his hand and be like, "Babe, babe, babe," and stuff like that. And there was just something kind of eerie about it from my end. There's something about the fight that kind of, back in my mind, it kind of felt like she was being emotionally manipulative in that argument, in that space. And but no one else seemed to be picking up this energy of Chelsea. People were just oh, she's insecure, and whatnot, but they weren't kind of picking up that emotional manipulation that she was playing with Jimmy, almost like a cat and mouse game. And Jimmy kind of seemed like he was shaking a little bit because he didn't expect this. He kind of expected Chelsea to be the chill, cool girl. That's what he thought he signed up for. He didn't think he was going to sign up for drama. But I appreciate that he apologized to her and he didn't want her to be mad. Because it seemed as if the whole time Jimmy wanted to make sure that him and Chelsea was good. Because I think he made a decision. This is the woman I love. I want to see it out. I want to get married. Things just got worse for them when they got back to Charlotte and they started back in their regular lives. Jimmy was working and Chelsea was again feeling insecure because she found out that Jimmy had seen a photo of Jess. And then she was thinking to herself, oh, now he's thinking, oh shit, I chose wrong because Jess is better looking than Chelsea. This is, and she even mentioned this. And so now she's feeling as if he's not showing her the affection that he deserves. And I think maybe she is picking up the fact that Jimmy really is not that attracted to her. And so her insecurities are building from that. But Jimmy seems to be making an attempt to work things with Chelsea. He seems as if, it seems like he's convincing himself he loves her, he wants to get married to her, and everything. And at first, at this time, Jimmy was kind of the villain among all of the guys. This was before Kenneth, showed his ass, before Jeremy showed his ass, and before, Clay was already himself at this time. But at the time, Jimmy was more or less more of the villain at this time out of the spouses. We felt bad for Chelsea. A little bit. But as more and more of their arguments build up, we kind of realized that, at least from my point, Chelsea was being really unreasonable in a lot of the arguments they had. She always kind of needed affirmations for him to be telling her that you love her, tell me I'm pretty, be affectionate towards me, and every single time she was I'm done, I don't want to sign up for this, and she would always whine and leave. And I just feel her insecurities just kept on building and building, and it came across clearly on the screen, because there was something about Jimmy that just triggered the unhealed inner child of her. The one that has been broken and mistreated, and abused by men over and over again. And I feel she needed to villainify Jimmy. She needed him to be this big dick. And so she was kept on trying to make sure that he was this guy, and she would antagonize him. She wanted him to be this villain that she's kind of built up in her head to make her seem like she was the victim, because that's how she was feeling. This is just sort of my analysis of Chelsea going through. But she was coming across as being too needy, too clingy. And I think Chelsea was an image, a mirror image for Jimmy, because Jimmy, I think, was like that in his relationships. He was the one who was needy and clingy. He needed that affirmation. And it's a little, when you see your worst traits in someone else, you become really more aggressive and you hate that more or less. And I think that was going on with Jimmy. Jimmy was seeing too much of himself in Chelsea. She was a mirror reflection. And so he deflected. He's I can't deal with this. You're being too clingy. And then they go up, but through all the arguments, they always seem to come to sort of agreement, mainly because I feel Jimmy folded a lot in doing their arguments because he wanted to make sure things were smoothly. But there would be times where you see them, they were really cute. I could see that love was there and it was building. And perhaps maybe Jimmy didn't feel 100% there, but I do think he did care and love Chelsea very much. And you meet up with Jimmy's friends, and Jimmy's friends, two of his closest friends, are girlfriends. And Chelsea is when Chelsea always comes and plays up, doesn't necessarily say anything that's necessarily wrong with their relationship. And so she's like, oh, I'm so excited. I know you guys are my girls. You're going to be my sisters. I'm so excited. So you think that this is great. Like, she's completely cool with over the fact that Jimmy's closest friends are girls. Now, Chelsea was lying to herself and definitely lying to Jimmy. She was not cool with the fact that Jimmy's closest friends were girls. Because in the past, Chelsea has been cheated on by men who were close with women, and they were cheated on with their closest girlfriends. So Chelsea already was intimidated by this. And then you put on the fact that Jimmy had a sexual relationship with one of these friends that we met. This was not brought across on camera. Jimmy told this to Chelsea in confidence, in private. And it gets revealed later on. We meet up with Jimmy's parents, his family. They're an adorable bunch. I can see that Jimmy comes from a lot of love. Jimmy looks like I see Jimmy has his daddy's eyes, so pretty eyes. And I didn't realize that Jimmy's a country boy. When I saw his family, I was like, oh, Jimmy's a country boy. I didn't notice that. And it seemed as if Chelsea seemed to fit in with the family. I was like, okay, she can really blend in. But once again, Chelsea is all about appearances because, she seemed like she was gelling with the friends. She was gelling with Jimmy's family. And they go home. Jimmy is like so happy. He's on a cloud nine. He's like, you fit in well with my family. I had such a great day with you. And then she's like, I was pissed off at you today. Already starting another fight. And she's like, you went out. And I don't want to be with someone who goes out all the time. He's like, I went out for 1 hour, had one drink. I was with my friends, my fraternity brothers. And she's, no, you weren't. You weren't with your fraternity brothers. You were hanging out with your girls. I know you were hanging out with your girlfriends because you chat with them all the time, especially the one that you had fucked in the past. And she was like basically going like, I'm uncomfortable with it because I know you fucked her. I know you fucked her. That was basically that was her saying, like, that's the being used in that promo. Like, I know you fucked her. And I just kind of want to talk about the mic drop moment during their last big fight where Jimmy was like, you never asked me to take a step back. Do you want me to take a step back for my friends? And Chelsea's like, yeah. And he's like, well, I'm not willing to take a step back. And he goes back in the house. I was like, Jimmy, I didn't know you had that in you. There's this amazing TikTok where someone like recreated that scene and made it seem like when Jimmy went in the bathroom, he was hyping himself up. He was like, oh my God, that was so good, man. When you said that, I can definitely see it because I could see him like boss music start playing in his head when he said that. And where he was walking, he was like, yeah, I did that. This is kind of where the love went sour for Jimmy because he had told her this in confidence. And he didn't want to bring it up on TV, and she did when she was drunk. Chelsea, when she's drunk, she gets in these big fights. And the way how she was going, she kept on she went from first being mad at him, the fact he was out partying and she doesn't want to be with someone who goes out all the time. You see Chelsea going out and have a drink every once in a while. The girl loves to have her alcohol. And then she switches off like, oh no, you were hanging out with your friends, the one that you always message at the time of your past relationship. And then next thing she threw out, you were hanging out with Jess. And he was like, what? I've never seen Jess a day in my life. And so really she was just fishing. She was just fishing. And I think at that point, I think Jimmy was like, he wanted to leave. He wanted to be done. But then Chelsea immediately went, please don't leave. Please don't leave. And there was something in my head. I kept on saying the way how she goes, she's extremely emotionally manipulative to the point where it kind of fringes on being like emotionally abusive. Like if you study it. And there's something about her. She reminds me of Megan. From the very famous Key and Peele sketch, Megan and Andre, that she plays into that game, and then next thing you know, Jimmy will be like, I'm done. And then she would say her sweet little words, and then next thing you know, Jimmy is like, yeah, let's give it another try. He was just full like all the time Andres did. Like it was kind of scary. Like watching Chelsea, I was kind of scared because this is a girl who would go completely unhinged, and next thing you know, she broke a bottle of wine and she's coming at you with a broken glass of wine. And then next thing you know, it's like, oh wow, I almost died. That's just how Chelsea's energy was feeling to me. Like she doesn't need a husband. She needs a therapist. And sometimes it felt like almost she needed an exorcist as well. Like I never thought that I would be like feeling bad for Jimmy. Like I thought I was just about like Chelsea. I'm like I went to fight him when he was like, well, she lied to me after the pause. But then I realized, no, Jimmy's a decent guy. I think he tried really hard with Chelsea. He really did try. They, to no one's surprised, they didn't make it to the altar, but they were together a lot longer than I think I expected them to be, because I think Jimmy really did try. He really wanted to marry her and give it a go, but he just realized, I don't think we should get married. And basically when they had that conversation, she had like a huge meltdown and made it, and she never really takes accountability for her wrongs. She always shifts it on to Jimmy. And this is the reason I think both of them I think they just bring out so much insecurities in like one another. Like I think Jimmy sees too much of himself in Chelsea and he's kind of repulsed by that. While Jimmy opens up all these wounds that Chelsea has and unhealed wounds, and she doesn't know how to deal with it. And so that's how she acts the way she does. Is not a good thing at all. And I feel as if they both need to do so much healing. I'm not too sure where their situation is. I don't think they're together after they decided to not go ahead with their wedding, just basically because of how Chelsea gets. But I was really proud of him for ending it, because he could have gone all the way, married her, and just had a very unhappy marriage, because every little thing he would have been walking on eggshells trying to make her feel happy, and he never would have won with her. He never would have won with Chelsea because he was always in the wrong, because Chelsea needed to make him a villain, because he just opened up too many wounds for her. He didn't make her feel secure. And I feel as if once Chelsea deals with a lot of begins her journey of healing, then I really think she'll be ready for a relationship, and she won't project so much on her romantic partners. I'm not too sure where Jimmy stands or whatnot. I do think he's ready for marriage. I think he just probably has to be more or less honest with what he's expecting, more or less. But it should be an interesting time. Yeah, it really should be an interesting time for the reunion. I'm not too sure what to expect. Man, that was a lot. That was a lot. It was a lot this season. I do hope they do better, because I come in for the love, not necessarily for the drama. I do watch the drama and my blood pressure boils and I'm just like, this is not what I want. You kind of want to cry, have those moments where you're crying when you've seen like Amy and Johnny getting married and you're crying because it's just so wonderful and so beautiful. But I think that's the first time I can remember when only one couple got married. Like, I mean, even the first season we had two, and they were beautiful, but I think it's just the show is so big and these people are not coming in with good intentions at all. Like, the casting directors are not vetting well, and they do it on purpose because they want hot messes. And you cannot be having all these people just showing people at their worst. I felt sometimes I felt uncomfortable seeing them the way, especially seeing like Chelsea. It got to a point where I was uncomfortable. I felt kind of so bad for her. I mean, I was kind of scared of her for sometimes. But I did kind of feel bad that she kind of has like herself at the worst be videotaped and seen by everyone and critiqued. Yeah. That it was season 6 of Love is Blind. But at least I watched a really good movie to make my heart not bleed so much. My heart did bleed anyways because it was a really sad movie. All of Us Strangers, beautiful film. In my revised top 5, for sure.
Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope that my little podcast made you a little bit happy.
If you have enjoyed this episode, make sure that you like and subscribe. And if you really love it, go ahead and share it with anyone you think may enjoy it as well.
And I've got to go because the wrap-up music is coming out right now, and I didn't really have time to thank all the people I had to thank, but gotta go. God bless.